What's going on? Matt Savoca here from the Stokastic Fantasy Football channel, and I'm excited to debut a brand new format for the start and sit video here on Stokastic Fantasy Football. We're going to go through every single game, every single fantasy relevant player, and just give you my opinion, start or sit. That simple. I may give you a little bit of a stat here or there, but no more videos where it's just 10 to 12 players that we want to highlight, go deep into the stats. If they're not on your roster, what good are all those stats? So instead, we're going to go through every player, and hopefully you get an opinion on every single person here. And I have an opinion on DK Sportsbook. It is a great time to sign up over there if you haven't. A $5 pregame money line bet on any sport. If it hits, you get $200 free in free bets. If you click the link in the video description below, you can get started today. LA Chargers at Atlanta Falcons. With the quarterbacks, it's kind of dicey to say to sit Marcus Mariota. He's 7th in carries, 5th in red zone carries, 3rd in rushing TDs, but in a 2-quarterback league, it's a yes. In a 1-quarterback league, you probably have better options. There is some upside here. If the Chargers get this to a shootout, then Mariota will definitely run and pass, but the volume just isn't there. Tyler Algier and Caleb Huntley are kind of splitting this backfield 65-35. Huntley surprisingly sneaks in as a low-end flex play in 12-team leagues. The Chargers have the 3rd worst adjusted fantasy points allowed to the running back position. On the Chargers side, Justin Herbert is a start. He's quarterback 10 in fantasy points per game. That is a little below expectation based on where we drafted him. He's still a starter. Eckler is an every week starter. Don't even think about benching him. To the receivers and tight ends, Drake London is a flex starter. Kyle Pitts is a low-end tight end 1. We finally got the breakout day from Kyle Pitts. Don't expect that every week. We haven't had more than 16 fantasy points like we had last week since week 7 of 2021. And then Drake London is down to wide receiver 48 in terms of expected fantasy points. The Chargers, at the very least, are mediocre against the pass. The Falcons are worse than mediocre against the pass, which means that Keenan Allen, if he's able to get on the field, should be a wide receiver 1. He said his hamstring got worse over the bye week when training. That's not always great. Joshua Palmer is clearly then in the start category. His last 2 healthy games, 18 targets overall. Gerald Everett, too. He's in that bottom end tight end 1 tier, maybe even top 10 as well. Atlanta not particularly bad against the tight end, but bad against the pass. So I'll start Everett if I'm in a pinch. Hey guys, do you want to join a community of almost 5,000 sports bettors, DFS players, and fantasy football players? Then join the Notorious and Stokastic combined Discord channel. It is truly the best place to get information from friends and professionals alike. We have premium channels available for you, and of course, you can talk trades and talk about all the things that can help us take down our fantasy championships. Click the link below to get started on your Discord journey today. Seattle at Arizona, another game where both defenses are bad enough that the game could get away from either team and create some shootout potential and some really good fantasy performances. We're starting Kyler Murray. We're starting Geno Smith. Geno Smith, 5th in the NFL in passing touchdowns right now. And Ken Walker. I mean, this guy's an every week top 12 running back in my rankings right now. Dude is a beast. In terms of Football Outsiders rush ranking, they're number 1 in the NFL. The Arizona backfield is a little bit tougher. Eno Benjamin is a go if James Conner can't play. If James Conner can play, then I almost think you have to bench them both and just go with some of the Arizona pass catchers as starters. And of course, Kyler has that rushing upside as well. And there are plenty of good receiving and tight end options in this Seattle-Arizona game. DeAndre Hopkins, 22 receptions, 262 receiving yards in 2 games so far. That's pretty good. You're starting him. Rondale Moore has had 8 or more targets in 3 of his last 4 games. And Zach Ertz, still a huge part of this offense and utilized a ton in the red zone. You're starting Lockett. You're starting Metcalf, who came back faster than expected, caught a touchdown. Let's be real. You just don't have players who are better than Lockett and Metcalf on your roster. This game has shootout potential. Don't start Noah Fant. Green Bay at Detroit. Since Jared Goff's quarterback 1 overall week in week 4, he's been quarterback 29, quarterback 28, and quarterback 14 in fantasy scoring. He's sometimes right on the fringe of startability, but I think we can say that he's a low-end to mid-end QB2. Only in super flex leagues am I starting him. DeAndre Swift, leaning towards sit In terms of medium projection right now, it's a start, but honestly, this is looking like Jamal Williams could have another strong day. Green Bay not particularly bad against the rush, but Williams has a great role whether Swift plays or doesn't play. He's definitely in the start category. Aaron Rodgers, a low-end quarterback 1, and I hate that he comes out that way in the projections, but it's because of the Detroit defense, 31st against the pass. A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones are both not great running back 2 plays, but they are startable. Aaron Jones, I will say, has had those 2 spike weeks to the point where some are believing that Aaron Jones actually is in the top 5 running back category. I think it's been a little bit more situational than that, but I definitely think you're starting both Jones and Dillon. Looking at the receivers and tight ends here, I was actually surprised to see some of the projections for these players as I plugged in the numbers. Amon-Ra St. Brown, you're obviously starting a low-end wide receiver 1 every week he suits up. But Josh Reynolds sneaks into a flex position, Romeo Doubs and Sammy Watkins, with Allen Lazard likely not playing here. And if you need a bye-week fill-in at the tight end position, Robert Tonyan, if he's kind of on waiver wires or maybe available for an easy trade, I don't think he's bad. I think there's 10 target upside here for one of these players. Josh Reynolds on the other side too is a top 40 option at the wide receiver position. Not fantastic, but again, we got a ton of teams on bye. Reynolds makes for a sneaky decent flex play. Baltimore at New Orleans, you're starting Lamar Jackson. New Orleans, they pitched a shutout defensively last week, but I don't think Lamar Jackson scores 0 points here. The passing TDs, they honestly haven't been there over the last 3 weeks, but he can beat you with his legs. We still haven't projected as a top 5 quarterback. We don't really have any of the running backs in the start category. We don't know if Gus Edwards is going to play at this point. Kenyon Drake has looked solid when he's gotten opportunity, but how can you really say that you know Kenyon Drake is going to get opportunity week to week? I'd rather just say no to the Ravens backfield right now. Andy Dalton, we have him about QB 18 in our rankings. That is, again, 2 QB worthy, but not one we're really choosing in a 1 quarterback league. And Alvin Kamara. Man, he looks healthy. Looks like he's unstoppable in the open field, catches passes. Dalton dumping it off all the time is great for him. Can't ask for anything more from an RB1 right now. The receiving options in this game are actually kind of solid. I think you can start Duvernay because he's one of the healthiest players in that receiving core. No Bateman. Andrews is banged up. I think you're going to see a solid usage day out of him, 6 to 7 targets probably. Demarcus Robinson and Isaiah likely will be involved, but as long as Mark Andrews suits up, he's still the number 1 receiving option. You're definitely starting him as long as he starts. Chris Olave, top 17 in target share and air yard share, and no one has more targets of 20-plus air yards. Taysom Hill is that player who could give you 4, he could give you 40, but he's very unlikely to get you 0. Don't start Juwan Johnson. Las Vegas and Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence is a sit quarterback for me. I'm interested to see how Jacksonville progresses this season. I hope they are taking the Josh Allen approach and just kind of letting Trevor Lawrence chuck it the rest of the season. We don't know if that's going to happen. He's still in the sit category outside the top 12 quarterbacks. ETN, best day as a pro last week. You're definitely starting him now. JaMychal Hasty is a clear handcuff, but he's a sit this week. Derek Carr let a lot of people down last week. Keep him on your bench this week. Josh Jacobs, undeniable volume. And even against the Jaguars defense that has been pretty good against the run, you gotta start Jacobs every week right now. To the receivers and tight ends, and guys, this is one of those pages where I know what the numbers say, and I realize we have so many teams on bye, but do we really feel that good about a lot of these players? Christian Kirk is now outside the top 25 in target share, but we have him projected inside the top 30 wide receivers. Zay Jones inside the top 40, more of a wide receiver 3-4 flex kind of play. Evan Ingram, the 5th most routes as a tight end 7 in targets right now. And I don't think Devontae Adams on the other side is going to have another flu game. He's had at least 9 PPR points in every single game prior to last week's stud. Mac Hollins is a healthy wide receiver in this receiving core. He's had 8+ targets 3 times this season. He's also had 4 or less targets 3 times this season. And then Hunter Renfrow. He hasn't seen more than 4 targets in 7 straight weeks. Buffalo at the New York Jets. I think we're going to see the Jets get absolutely walloped at the Meadowlands. Josh Allen, absolutely starting him. Devin Singletary, I think you're still starting him. I realize Naheem Hines, he hasn't moved over in all of our projections right now, but you're still keeping him on the bench at least for this week. Of course, you're doing the same with James Cook. Zach Wilson, he's a sit, one of the least efficient quarterbacks in the NFL this year and in the last 3 years. Michael Carter sneaks in as a flex play, but he's kind of risky business against the Buffalo defense that is still top 3 against the run. This game is really simple at the wide receiver and tight end position, right? You start Gabe Davis and, of course, Stephon Diggs. You start Garrett Wilson if you need a flex. You sit everyone else. People are going to Dawson Knox. I can't do it. He scores a touchdown here and there. He's utilized sometimes in the red zone, but the volume just simply isn't there this year. If you need a tight end in a very deep league, obviously a starter on the Bills is fine, but I'd rather go elsewhere if you're just in a regular 12-team league. Tennessee at Kansas City. Start Patrick Mahomes. He's one of the best passers we've ever seen. That's pretty much all the analysis you need. His efficiency is back up to near his MVP year levels. If you look at his last 500 snaps, it's just fantastic. You're starting one running back from the Kansas City Chiefs. Our projections say Isaiah Pacheco. If the answer is no for you, I also get it. Pacheco sneaks in as a flex-worthy starter. Derrick Henry, of course, you put him in your starting lineup and you don't think twice. In the receiving game, still starting Kelsey every single week. Juju, I think I have to trust Juju at least as a wide receiver 3 right now. 2 spike weeks in a row before the bye. Obviously, Kadarius Toney getting traded means they're not fully comfortable with the wide receiver core, but I think that has to do more with just having Mecole Hardman and Marquez Valdes-Scantling underperforming. And talk about underperforming, I don't think we're going to see anything out of Sky Moore as well, and I don't think we're going to see any fantasy-relevant performance out of any Tennessee wide receivers. Keep Woods, Westbrook-Ikhine, and Hollister on your bench. Miami at Chicago. This one is tough to evaluate because Justin Fields, quarterback 8, quarterback 5, those are his last rankings the last 3 weeks at the quarterback position, but our projections don't have him looking very good. Just outside the top 12, I will say. If you want to start him for the upside, I get it. Right now, David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert getting such a large amount of volume that against a Miami team that has struggled defensively this year, they look like good volume-only plays. And then on the other side, you're going with Tua Tagovailoa, who's on fire, one of the most efficient games we've seen from a quarterback all season last week, and Raheem Mostert, who is now the dude in the Miami backfield. I realize they trade for Jeff Wilson, who will be mixed in, but I guarantee this, he'll be mixed in slow. This Miami-Chicago game actually has some sneaky shootout potential, mostly because of the Miami Dolphins' ability to score. I think you can start Darnell Mooney as a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 in a 12-team league. You're obviously sitting Equanimeous St. Brown and the Chase Claypool's in the mix. I don't think Claypool is startable either. Cole Kmet, I don't want any part of either. Hill and Waddle, put them in your lineup. No questions asked. Now, Mike Gesicki is one where he looks like a tight end 1 in our rankings right now, but just barely. He needs a touchdown to get there because the volume is low. Sherfield is taking some targets as well, and Mostert and Wilson will be used. But Gesicki sneaks into that tight end 1 conversation. He's in the start category. Philadelphia at Houston, the Thursday night game. This is pretty obvious here. You're starting Dameon Pierce on the Houston side, and then Jalen Hurts, Miles Sanders. Go for it when they're 2 touchdown favorites, even on the road. The rushing capability of both of these players. Now, I have seen some concerns that if this game gets out of hand, they may actually use more of a dual backfield with Kenneth Gainwell mixing in just to keep everyone healthy, but still, they have to score those points some way. I think Miles Sanders is a definite start in this game. Then in the receiving game, Brandon Cooks is fine, wide receiver 2, but a low-end wide receiver 2 at that. You're not starting any other receiving option for the Houston Texans. You're starting A.J. Brown. You're starting Devonta Smith. You're starting Dallas Goedert. I realize that you're not going to have a 3-touchdown game, and you're not going to have games from Smith and Goddard together, but with this offense playing as well as they are, the spike weeks for 2 out of the 3 of these players every single week, it's crazy, the potential for this offense right now. I'll say it right here, they could actually run the table in Philadelphia. Minnesota and Washington. Minnesota is one of those teams, 6-1, and still doesn't get a lot of respect. A lot of metrics still have them league average on offense and defense, but they're playing a below average team in Washington in both phases. You start Dalvin Cook, of course. Kirk Cousins, who's 10th in the NFL in passing touchdowns, 18th in air yards. I actually think I like the upside here. His team is 8th in passing attempts this year. That's fantastic volume compared to the Minnesota Vikings of old. I'm only interested in Antonio Gibson on a per-touch basis. He's looked way better than Brian Robinson. No one else in that battery in Washington. Taylor Heineke, even in a super flex league, I think he's a thin start. In the receiving game, you start Jefferson, you start Thielen, and if you need a hope and a prayer tight end, I guess you start TJ Hawkinson. He's not pictured up here, but I think he's going to be utilized the way they utilized Irv Smith, 60-something% snap share and probably 4 to 5 targets a game. Terry McLaurin finally getting strong usage, and Curtis Samuel still has 7 or more targets in 4 of his last 6 games. Carolina at Cincinnati, another game where Cincinnati has high expectations and they better not blow it like they did against the Browns. You're sitting PJ Walker, even though he had a dime at the end of regulation against the Falcons. Donta Foreman, even if Chuba Hubbard plays, he's still in the flex category for me. Joe Burrow and Joe Mixon absolutely starting. In the receiving game for both of these teams, this is as cut and dry as it is for any game on this Week 9 slate. If they're on a roster, they're probably playable. That means you're not playing Terrace Marshall or Laviska Shenault, but you are starting Higgins, Boyd, Hurst, DJ Moore. Oh man, I wish we could start Jamar Chase in this game. It'd be great. We'll see him soon. LA Rams at Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a rematch of that fantastic divisional round matchup from last year's playoffs. And my, how these two teams changed in a year. Both offenses completely floundering, and really, I think Henderson, Brady, and Fournette, while we have them in the start category, they're kind of flimsy starts, right? They all have ways that they could drastically underperform expectations. Matthew Stafford, as my buddy Nick Lepre said, he is completely done with in fantasy football right now. This offensive line is imploding. This game has a low total. I mean, we have some obvious receiving options we can get to in a minute, but the quarterbacks and running backs, unlike last year, this does not look nearly as good. And just before you go, want to give one more shout out to our presenting sponsor, DK Sportsbook. They are running an awesome offer. You want to turn $5 into $200 with one bet? Click the link below. Bet a pregame moneyline bet on any single sport. And if they win, it's $200 in your account in free bets. Easy as that. An awesome offer thanks to our friends from DK Sportsbook. And as we mentioned a moment ago, we do have some solid options in the receiving cores. Kupp, Evans, Godwin, no question about it. Even if this game goes under its low total, they're still probably going to get theirs. The ones that you have to be concerned about, it's Higbee or Robinson. Robinson, just a complete no-show this season, just outside the top 30 in target share. And I would get if you don't want to start him this week. But with so many teams on bye, he does sneak into the top 40 wide receivers, which makes him flex-worthy in a 12-team league. Higbee is the one that honestly has been getting more volume, and more consistent volume is in a safer start at the tight end position. And we close it out with Indianapolis at New England. This could be what I call a sludge fest. Runs, bad runs, not a lot of scoring, and that means not a lot of fantasy points. Start Jonathan Taylor if he's healthy enough to play, but honestly, it looks like the way the reports are going, we may get another week of Deion Jackson, who would be a solid running back too, if that's the case. Ramondre Stevenson, definitely in the start category. I'm very scared to say that when we ran the numbers, Damian Harris also in that start category. If you listen to the running back stream on this same channel, Andy Francis was stomping for Damian Harris, thinking that Bill Belichick will go back to a committee approach. I'm not so sure. Ramondre has looked incredible the last few weeks. And as we close things out with the wide receivers and tight ends, I can only report the numbers. I don't feel good starting any of these players in this matchup where someone could win legitimately 9-6 in a Sam Ehlinger versus Mac Jones / maybe we see Bailey Zappi kind of matchup. I think there's some talented players in this pool, but I don't know if we get any spike weeks. Michael Pittman is the safest of them. Then Jacoby Myers, who has clearly alleviated his touchdown problems from the years past. He's scored a bunch this year. And then one of Paris Campbell and Alec Pierce may actually find themselves viable. In our projections right now, it's Alec Pierce, but prior to Matt Ryan's benching, Paris Campbell was seeing a ton of work. I wouldn't be surprised if there's still some fluctuation with the way Sam Ehlinger uses his receiving weapon. And that's it, guys. That's going to do it for all the start-sit decisions you need in Week 9 fantasy football. Make sure to check out our awesome sponsor, DK Sportsbook, in the link below, and check it here for all the live streams, VODs, and strategy Q&As we have on Stokastic Fantasy Football. Until next time, I'm Matt Savoca. We'll see you guys later.